My BF gave me a ring to seal our love, but it's the missing jewel from my mother's will. I played dumb until the cops showed up. Hey there guys, Zara here, and welcome back to another amazing episode of Tea Time with Zara. I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's video. I'm Emily, and I'm 24 years old. I lost my mom a couple of years ago, and it's been just me and my stepdad since I was little. My mom left behind a will, and I always thought that when she passed, her estate would come to me. But I found out that the will was changed at the last minute, and now a huge part of what was supposed to be my inheritance is going to my boyfriend, Mark, who's 27. We've been together for 3 years, and I thought we were solid. But this has thrown me for a loop. So I confronted Mark about the will. I was expecting him to be as shocked as I was, but instead, he was super calm and told me that my mom changed the will because she really cared about him. That sounded off to me because my mom and I were really close, and she never mentioned anything like that to me. Then, at a family dinner, my aunt, who's always been a bit of a gossip, made a comment about how Mark and my mom were pretty close before she died. This was news to me, and it started making me feel really uneasy about everything. I didn't want to believe it, but it planted this seed of doubt in my head. A few days later, I was going through some old photo albums and found a picture of Mark and my mom together. They looked more than just friendly, they looked intimate. I hid the photo because I didn't want Mark to see it and come up with some excuse. Things got weirder when Mark proposed to me. He gave me this beautiful ring that looked exactly like one that's been in my family for generations. I knew that ring was supposed to be part of my inheritance, and seeing it on my finger made me feel conflicted. I said yes to the proposal because I was overwhelmed, but I immediately called my best friend, Lisa, and told her everything. She's been my rock through all of this. Mark didn't stop there, though. He started making changes to the family home, saying it was what my mom would have wanted. He never asked me what I thought about any of it, and that really bothered me. It felt like he was taking over. The last straw was when I found a letter from my mom hidden in a secret compartment in her desk. The letter said she didn't trust Mark and was worried about his intentions. Before I could even process it, Mark walked in and saw me with the letter. We had a huge fight, and he stormed out, leaving me alone in the house. After he left, I was looking at the will again, and something caught my eye. The signature on the will didn't match my mom's signature on other documents. It was like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe it. Was Mark capable of altering the will? Why would he do that? I felt so betrayed and confused. I just sat there, trying to make sense of it all. Update 1. I have to get this off my chest because it's been eating away at me for weeks now. So a few weeks back, I found myself at my mom's grave. I was there, just staring at the headstone, still wearing the engagement ring Mark gave me. But honestly, I felt nothing but this heavy sadness. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Mark, well, he's been staying at his buddy's place ever since our big blow-up. He's been texting me, trying to apologize, but his messages always have this way of making me feel like I'm the one who's overreacting. It's like he can't just say sorry without adding a but at the end of it. Then I met with one of my mom's oldest friends for coffee. She casually mentioned that my mom had been talking about revising her will. That got me thinking all over again about the will and the changes that left Mark with a chunk of what was supposed to be mine. One day, I was at this local cafe, just trying to clear my head, and I overhear these strangers talking about some guy who's known for forging documents. And get this, the description they gave sounded a lot like Mark. I couldn't believe it. I mean, what were the odds? Things got even more awkward when my dad, who's totally clueless about the tension between Mark and me, invited him over to this family barbecue. I had to see him there, and it was just uncomfortable. At one point, I caught him lying about where he was the day my mom supposedly changed her will. He said he was out of town, but I remember clearly that he was around because we had lunch together that day. After that, I just started to pull away from Mark. I threw myself into my work and hung out with my best friend Lisa a lot more. I needed space to think without him around. But Mark, he wouldn't let up. He sent me this expensive watch as a gift. It came with this note about how much he loves me and wants to fix things. I put the watch on because, well, it was a gift, and I didn't want to think he was being dishonest about everything. But then I noticed this engraving on the back. It had a date on it that I recognized immediately. It was my parents' anniversary. That watch was part of my mom's collection. I confronted Mark about it. I asked him how he got the watch and why he gave it to me. He finally admitted he took it from my mom's things, but he said it was supposed to be for me anyway. He claimed he was just trying to give me what was mine. I don't know what to do. I'm wearing the watch, but every time I look at it, I feel this mix of anger and confusion. I can't shake the feeling that Mark isn't being honest with me, but part of me still wants to believe he's the guy I fell in love with. It's just all so messed up. Update 2. Man, I did not expect to be making this update so soon, but here we are. It's been a few months since I last talked about the whole mess with my stepdad, Mark, and the will situation. I've been trying to keep my head down and focus on work, which, thankfully, I'm doing pretty well at. But, as you can guess, the drama with Mark hasn't exactly faded into the background. So Mark has been pulling out all the stops to try and win me back. Flowers, surprise visits, you name it. But after everything that's happened, I just can't. I've been keeping him at arm's length, which is exactly where he needs to stay. Things took a turn when my aunt got sick. I went to see her in the hospital, and she dropped a bombshell on me. She told me she saw Mark and my mom having a huge fight once. She couldn't remember what it was about, but it was bad enough that it stuck with her. That just added another layer of doubt about Mark's whole story. Then, I found an old email from my mom to her lawyer. It was about Mark acting weird and asking her for money. It's like every time I think I've seen the worst of it, something else pops up to prove me wrong. In the midst of all this, Mark started dating someone new. Her name's Sarah, and she seems nice enough, but she has no idea what she's getting into. I ran into her by accident, and I couldn't help but feel this weird mix of relief that it wasn't me anymore and jealousy that he's moved on so fast. I warned her to watch out for Mark, but I doubt she took it seriously. The property sale was the next big thing. I decided to sell this piece of land I inherited, and out of nowhere, Mark shows up claiming he's entitled to a share of it. I couldn't believe the nerve of him. Then, at a friend's party, I overheard him bragging about how he was going to get a good deal from the sale of my property. I was so mad I confronted him right there in front of everyone. He just left with Sarah, looking all smug, and I felt totally defeated. But the universe must have my back, because later that night, I found an old voice recording of my mom. She was warning me about Mark, saying he wasn't who he seemed to be, and that I should be careful. Hearing her voice after all this time, it was like she was reaching out to me, telling me I was on the right track. So that's where I'm at. I've got this recording, and I know Mark's bad news, but I'm just so tired of all this drama. I want to move on, but it feels like every time I try, something else drags me back in. I'm just hoping that this is the end of it and that I can finally start to put all this behind me. Update 3. A lot has happened. So let's get right into the update. It's been a whole year since I last talked about the whole mess with Mark, my late mom's will, and all that drama. I've moved to a new city now, trying to leave all that behind me. But you know how it is. The past has a way of popping up when you least expect it. So, I've been doing my best to ignore Mark's attempts to contact me. He's been sending messages, calling, you name it, but I've been hitting that decline button faster than you can say, manipulative X. I've got a new life here, and I'm not about to let him waltz back in and ruin it. Things have been looking up, though. I started seeing this guy from work, Tom. He's been super supportive, really understanding about all the stuff I went through with Mark. It's been refreshing, to have someone who just gets it and doesn't hold your past against you. But then, out of nowhere, Mark shows up at my new place. Just appears like some bad penny. Tom was there, and things got heated real quick. Mark was doing his usual thing, trying to worm his way back into my life, but I wasn't having any of it. I told him to get lost, but before he left, he dropped this letter on my doorstep. It was from my mom, one he'd kept hidden all this time. In it, she wrote about cutting Mark out of the will because she'd finally seen through his act. It was like getting closure I didn't know I needed. Tom, bless him, suggested we just forget about Mark and move on. And that's what I decided to do. No more letting Mark's shadow hang over me. I was done. But Mark, being Mark, couldn't let things be. He started trying to mess with my relationship with Tom, spreading nasty rumors about me. Tom came to me, all concerned, and we had it out. I showed him all the evidence of Mark's past manipulations, and Tom realized he'd been played. He apologized, and we got past it. We even went to this charity event together, and guess who shows up? Mark. He's all I've changed, and I want forgiveness. But I've heard that song and dance before. I wasn't about to fall for it again. So that's where I'm at. I've got a great guy by my side, I'm living in a new city, and I'm finally feeling like I can put all the Mark drama behind me. It's been a long road, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. Last update. A lot has happened since my last post, and I've got some pretty big news to share. 2 years have flown by, and I can hardly believe it myself, but Tom and I are engaged. It's been a whirlwind of happiness and honestly, a much-needed fresh start. The best part? I haven't heard a peep from Mark since that awkward encounter at the charity event. It's like he vanished from my life, and I couldn't be more relieved. Just when I thought I was completely done with that chapter, I received an invitation in the mail. It was for Mark's wedding. I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions, but I decided to just ignore it. Why let him take up any more space in my life, right? Tom and I have been so focused on building our future together, and that's all that matters. My aunt, who's been like a second mom to me since my mother passed, recently told me how proud she was of the way I've handled everything. She said my mother would be proud too. Hearing that meant the world to me. It's been tough, but I've tried to stay strong and make choices that honor my mom's memory. Speaking of honoring her memory, Tom and I decided to keep the family home and renovate it. We thought it would be a beautiful way to keep her spirit alive. During the renovations, we stumbled upon a hidden safe behind one of the walls. Inside, there were documents that proved without a doubt that Mark had forged the will and manipulated everything to his advantage. It was the smoking gun I never had. I spent a long time thinking about what to do with this new evidence. In the end, I chose not to act on it. I'm done letting Mark's deceitful actions control any part of my life. It's time to move forward, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Our wedding day finally arrived, and it was everything I could have ever hoped for. I married Tom in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by our friends and family. I felt so content and at peace, knowing I was starting a new chapter with a man who truly loves and respects me. But life always has its surprises, doesn't it? As the reception was winding down, my dad pulled me aside. He had this look on his face, like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or frown. He told me that Mark's new wife is actually the daughter of the man rumored to forge documents. I couldn't believe it. It was like all the pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicked into place. I didn't let that news spoil the day, though. Tom and I danced the night away, and I've never felt happier. It's strange how things turn out, but I'm just grateful to be where I am today, with the people I love.